My whole life, I have had a relationship with rage. And for a long time, I had no clue what to do with it. And neither did anybody else in my life. Ever since I was young, I can remember having these deep bouts of intense anger at life that manifested as burning in my body, a tightness in my chest, and all I could do is cry and cry and cry and scream. And I never quite understood where this came from or why it was happening to me. For a long time, I thought that there was something wrong with me. I thought there was something wrong with my body. I thought there was something wrong with my mind. I thought there was something wrong with who I was. And as I grew, this manifested as poor relationships and awful communication skills. But truly, I was just doing the best I could with what I knew and with what I was experiencing inside of my body. I didn't know. I didn't know what this was. And I had no idea that a relationship was forming within me. I had no freaking clue. At some point along the line, I was forced to confront this rage within me, something I had been suppressing and denying for as long as I could remember, could no longer be ignored. And this was absolutely and utterly terrifying. It forced me into a deep communion with my own vessel and with God. Essentially, I had nowhere else to go. I had no one else to turn to. It felt like no matter what I did, I was projecting this out onto all of the people in my life, and it was ruining my relationships. And the more I learned to face this through deep compassion for myself, the more I began dipping my toe into what it meant to truly move through and integrate the rage and the anger, the more I began to realize that this emotion was coming from the darkest aspects within me that were void of attention, that had been neglected. And the more that these aspects within me were neglected and avoided, the larger they grew, the more intense they became. And I had to bravely and courageously cultivate a loving and nurturing space within myself, almost like I had to put on armor of love and compassion and grace to go within and face these parts of myself that were angry, that felt unseen and unheard. It got to the point where I had absolutely no choice but to face them, and I was terrified. I still am terrified sometimes. But what I'm learning is that these were never parts of myself that I needed to get rid of or shame or ridicule. These have always been parts of myself that had fragmented from the wholeness of my being because they were deemed unworthy or not good enough or too much or too loud or too sensitive, whether in this lifetime or parallel lifetimes. It doesn't matter. They're still connected to me. And it is up to me to not get rid of them, to not shame them, but to love them, to shine the light of my awareness on the darkness that these aspects hold. And the only reason that they hold such intensity is because of how long they have withstood the neglect and the abandonment. This journey has never been about fighting myself, about fighting these parts of myself, but rather softening enough to let them in. Softening enough in my exterior with how I speak to myself and how I hold myself that they feel welcome, that they no longer feel abandoned. They feel seen. They feel seen by me. And the reason I was projecting this anger outwards onto all of the people in my relationship was really because all of these dark aspects within me wanted so badly to be seen and validated and loved, and didn't know how to go about receiving that because I was ignoring them. And through this utter neglect on my part, which is okay, I was doing the best I knew how to do with where I was at, but it was neglect by me. They didn't know how to reach me, so they manifested through me onto the people in my life, just desperately clawing to be seen. But it was never anybody else's job to see or validate these parts of myself. It has been and will always be my job. It is my job to see these parts of myself. It is my job to no longer abandon these parts of myself. In a deep way that I have cultivated to integrate these dark aspects of myself has been when I get angry, and this was in A Course in Miracles a couple weeks ago, and it's funny that it's coming up now in this stream of consciousness, that I am not angry for the reason I have thought I am. When something triggers the rage inside of me, I must realize that I am not enraged for the reason I think I am, and to stop, to not allow it to pour out of me in a toxic way, and to go within. And the way I personally do this is through stretching. I'm able to invite God into my body, into the tight and tense parts of my body. I am able to invite God to shine the light of God into these places in my body that are stagnant. I'm not trying to get rid of the tensity or the stagnancy or the toxicity. I'm trying to crack open my heart and welcome this into me with loving awareness. It has never been about suppression or denial or shame. It has always been about cracking your heart open in the most pure way and welcoming the parts of yourselves that feel unloved to finally come home to love. This is all it's ever been about, is love. These parts of yourself want to feel loved by you.